Hi, this is Learning by Tony, Brenton, Sharita, Robert, and Matthew. What is learning? Learning is the change of behavior as a function of experience. Our knowledge or skills are acquired through experience, study, or being taught. In personality, learning-based approaches fall into two categories: behaviorism and social learning theories. Basically, behaviorism is the belief that all knowledge comes from direct public observation. Behaviorism came from older ideas in philosophy such as empiricism, associationism, hedonism, and utilitarianism. Behaviorism identifies with three types of learning. A very basic technique is habituation, which is the lessening of response to a repeated stimulus. Classical conditioning involves associating an involuntary response in a stimulus, while operant conditioning is associating a voluntary behavior and a consequence. They both affect changes in emotions, feelings, and physiologic responses. Operant conditioning is where you find the ideas of reinforcement. Habituation is a type of learning which happens in the most simple living organisms, such as an amoeba. An example from personal experience would be the time when I moved to the Dallas area and I moved close to the DFW airport, and I couldn't sleep at night because of the airplanes constantly taking off and landing. The sound was just crazy loud. But after about a week, I no longer heard those sounds anymore. It just kind of went away. In a study done by Bartlett, it showed that individuals who played violent video games were less likely to help someone in need. This is because that repeated exposure to violence caused the individual's personality to become more aggressive and less empathetic. If we think about that, it's like our society becoming comfortably numb with all this violence. That's why we see all these mass shootings on the news and just another segment. The very well-known experiment of classical conditioning is that of Pavlov's dogs. Pavlov discovered classical conditioning by accident during his studies on measuring dogs' saliva buildup under different conditions. During his experiments, Pavlov discovered that the dogs did not start salivating when food is put in front of them, but they did, however, when they heard the footsteps of the assistant down the hallway that was bringing them their food. Pavlov then realized salivation was a learned response and that he could teach his dogs to associate any item, sound, or event with the reward of food. The most famous item he associated with food for the dogs was a bell. He would ring the bell and the dogs would begin to salivate before it was given the food. Here's a good example of classical conditioning. This is a scene from The Office between Jim and Dwight.
Hey Dwight, do you want an Altoid? I don't know. Hey Dwight, do you want an Altoid? What do you think? I have to reboot again. What do you think? Dogs salivate. The scientists, dogs who train dogs to salivate. What? I don't know. Hey Dwight, do you want an Altoid? I don't know. What do you think? What? In school, we learned about this scientist.
Learned helplessness is a condition where individuals begin to believe they have no control over what happens to them, eventually not even trying to change their circumstances. This happens when external and internal environments collide. There is a feeling of fear and anxiety that danger is impending, but it's unclear when this will happen. It's an inability of never establishing a predictable pattern of response and reward or punishment that leads the person to act as if nothing he or she does matters. I'm sure all of us have had a feeling of helplessness at some point of our lives. Think about studying really hard for an exam and you get the grade back, and it's not good. This might make one feel that they have no control over their performance and could lead to not studying or giving up altogether. This can have some devastating consequences on motivation. This can lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. The study shown here is an example of how it could affect someone years down the road. Operant conditioning uses rewards and punishments to increase or decrease behavior. Great example of operant conditioning is a New Year's resolution to get in shape. So many people have done this, and so many people have failed. Many times the motivation just runs out. A way to keep this habit going, though, is through operant conditioning. Setting goals with rewards can maybe turn exercise into a habit. Perhaps treat yourself to a nice dinner after a week full of workouts, or maybe going on a vacation to the beach to reward yourself for months of hard work. It's difficult to talk about operant conditioning without mentioning reinforcement and punishment. There are positive and negative sides to both. Positive meaning adding something, and negative meaning taking something away. An example of positive reinforcement would be giving a dog a treat for doing a trick, or giving a child an allowance for cleaning their room. An example of negative reinforcement could be parents removing a curfew because their teenager has shown responsibility. An example of positive punishment would be making the team run sprints because of a bad play. Notice sprints is added. An example of negative punishment would be an Olympic athlete being stripped of a medal because of a positive drug test. Notice the medal taken away. If you must punish, here are 5 principles of how to punish. Number 1, make sure there is an alternative to the punishment that is rewarding. This could help for better behavior next time. Number 2, make sure to be specific about the punishment. Not knowing what one is being punished for may cause fear and anxiety. Number 3, timing and consistency. For example, you come home to school books torn up all over the living room. You could be happy, but most likely you might want to punish your dog. But if you do, they might not know why they are being punished. Number 4, conditioning secondary punishing stimuli. An example would be counting to 3 before they get in trouble. Number 5, avoid mixed messages. An example of this would be a child getting in trouble from their father and them running to their mother for comfort. There are dangers of punishment as well. Punishment can arouse emotion. The person being punished could feel pain or humiliation. They could also begin to fear and hate the punisher. On the other hand, the punisher might get a little satisfaction out of the punishment and become more aggressive. Number 2, it is difficult to be consistent with punishment. Number 3, it is hard to know what a punishment should be. Always be careful with words. Number 4, punishment can teach wrong things such as powerful people hurting smaller people. Number 5, punishment motivates concealment. A child gets in trouble for talking, but when something bad is actually happening, they are too scared to speak up. Another big concept of learning is the social learning theory. Humans are social creatures, and we learn by watching others. It can be parents, teachers, siblings, peers, athletes, movie stars, and many more. The social learning theory can be broken down into 3 core concepts. We learn by observing others, our mental state is essential in the learning process, and learning doesn't mean behavior will change. Albert Bandura popularized the social learning theory with his ideas of self-efficacy, observational learning, and reciprocal determinism. In 2015, a study into college alcohol use showed that students overestimate the amount of alcohol their peers consume. This overestimation has a positive relationship to the amount of alcohol the student then consumes. This research also shows that binge drinking in college students seems to be the result of social forces. College women report when drinking, they are more likely pressured or taken advantage of by college men. Despite that, women could still follow social pressures and positive outlooks instead of negative experiences and expectations.